Hey everybody, it's Alexander Dahl with Manifest Vitality once again. So I've been continuing to edit down the videos, so I got another one that's ready to go here. We'll go ahead and get straight into that one. So without further ado, here you go. All right, bye. All right, so I'm currently on the phone with Rachel. She's another one of the musicians that reached out to me about the current interview series going on. So I'm going to go ahead and give her the opportunity to introduce herself.
Hi, my name is Rachel Huitsing, and I am a classically trained but currently making folk-esque uh, independent music. And I'm from southwestern Ontario.
Awesome. So I always like to start, in the beginning. When did you first identify with music, and what about it really drew you in and attracted you to it?
Oh, I loved music since go. My dad was always playing stuff from his childhood, so lots of like really late 60s, but lots of 70s and 80s hits. I remember being, 5 years old and singing at the top of my lungs to the Nylons and, 16 Candles on road trips. And music was just always a big part of my life, and I always was singing along to it.
Awesome. How old would you say you were once you kind of began actually interacting with it, whether it be writing lyrics or learning an instrument?
Well, I started piano lessons, I think, during grade 2 or 3 in school, and loved it. Sorry, my grandparents, my dad's parents, lived with us in a granny flat, and they brought with them this massive old upright piano, and I was just always down there thinking away on it. So my parents got me into piano lessons pretty much as soon as anybody would take me, and I took piano lessons, classical piano, for I don't know, until I was 21. So however long that is.
That's quite some time. Did you only do piano, or did you pick up any other instruments in that time?
I started taking voice when I was 14 or 15. Voice was an extra, so I had to pay for it, was the deal. But if I paid for the lessons, then I would get rides to voice lessons. So I started taking voice when I was 15, and I started working, and mostly started with kind of musical theater with a little bit of classical stuff thrown in. But then when I went to university, I got my degree in vocal music performance, and that was all classical, lots of opera, lots of art song.
That's cool. That must have been kind of intense schooling to go through.
Yeah, it was a lot of practicing. we had a we had all our practice rooms were in the basement, so we called it the music dungeon. And I got on really good terms with the security. So when they locked the building up for the night, they would just leave me in there, and I could
Nice.
just haunt the building to my heart's content.
Excellent. So through that time that you were learning piano and then also taking voice, what were like your personal ambitions with it? Like why were you taking those courses?
I don't know that I really thought about it that way. It was music, and those were the avenues through which I could make music at that time. So I grabbed at it with both hands. I did discover Lorena McKennitt, who's actually local to me, when I was probably about 10 or 11. And that's when I started thinking like, oh, I could be a musician. I could like do this thing and like make a name for myself and like have this persona on stage and like do the performing thing. That's when the performing bug really started to take.
Okay. And once that did kind of set in, how did you kind of determine the type of content and the voice that you wanted to have?
Oh, that took a long time. That took a really long time. I thought I was going to be a classical musician. Oh, even after I graduated university, I, for a couple of years, thought about getting my Royal Conservatory of Music accreditation, which is a thing here in Canada, and possibly, going to a young professionals program and getting into opera. And I loved opera. The school that I was at was close enough to the city of Omaha, Nebraska, and they have a really wonderful opera program. And they actually had some of the opera singers come to our college and do a talk and do like a performance class and stuff. And so I loved the process of dismantling the arias and digging into the language and the translations and the performance and all of that. And then it just became really clear that if you were going to do opera, that's all you could do. And you had to go at it 12,000%. And everything else had to fall by the wayside. And there's a lot of sacrifice inherent in that. And I got married and we moved back to Ontario from the States where I was in school. And there was just a lot of things that kind of took me out of that. And then the further out of it I got, when I would dip my toes back into it, just the people in the classical music world are very they're very opinionated, and they can come across as very snobby, especially to somebody who has stepped out of the stream for a minute, no matter what their reasons. Just if you've stepped out of the stream, you're not fully dedicated. And so you get a little, looked down upon for that. And, I just started realizing that I loved singing in that style, but I also loved doing other things. And then when I started writing my own stuff, which was only a few years ago, I realized, if I write my own stuff, I can do all the genres. I can, pull some Evanescence references, and I can do some Celtic and some folk, and I can do the classical thing, and I can, write a song and have a recitative in the middle of the song because it's my stuff.
Absolutely. So along those lines, once you did kind of get to that realization that you could just write your own stuff and really make it your own, how did you kind of go about, producing those things, like getting instrumentation? Obviously, you could do piano yourself. How did you expand beyond that?
Yeah. So I started writing in the filk scene, which is not folk, it's filk. And filkers are very much about music in the moment, in the room. They sit down in circles and sing all their own original songs or songs that they've parodied to be about Star Trek or Lord of the Rings or whatever it may be. And, everybody sings along, and you have these long songs with repetitive choruses, and everybody sings along and improvises harmonies and all of these things. And so that's what I started writing for. So it was very much to the point of being able to just perform it live. And then I did FOM this last winter, February album writing month. And that's when I really started playing around with recording and, figuring out some string padding and some percussion and things like that. And then as far as a professional level, my producer for this first album that I'm working on, she's the one who's really introducing me to other things and working with other musicians and expanding to studio musicians and things like that. So that's pretty recent for me. I'm very practiced in performing with other musicians. I've performed with harpsichordists and cellists and violinists, and with our choir, we performed with bands and all sorts of things. But as far as like studio work, that's still pretty new to me.
Sure. So essentially you kind of started that whole outward production process in like a smaller circle, and then you're currently in the process of making that into like a larger production, into a full self-written album kind of thing.
Yeah, exactly.
Awesome. So along those lines, once you do get to the point where it's released and everything, how would you like to see that be received, as well as would you plan on doing like live shows with it?
Well, that's kind of how I got the opportunity to cut the album. Was I started performing online at the beginning of COVID through onlineconcertthing.com. And the people who run it, Heather and Ben, they also have their own recording studio. And so getting to know them getting to know my music and seeing what I had to offer inspired that working relationship. So yeah, I love performing. I would love to do live shows as soon as it's safe and there's venues that are available for that
right.
kind of thing. but as far as it goes now, I'm getting pretty used to doing the online shows.
Mm-hmm.
They're pretty fun because like I have people tuning in from like Western Canada and Virginia and Pennsylvania and
Mm-hmm.
Florida and like all over the place, and they all talk to each other, and that's pretty awesome too.
So my knowledge of that music scene is somewhat limited, but I'm gonna take a guess. And so for the type of music that you're writing, I imagine there's somewhat large scale orchestration involved in it. Would you be looking to duplicate that in a live setting, or would you let some of it fall to like backing tracks?
Actually, all of the stuff on the album is stuff that I perform live solo. So it's all stuff that can be done with a piano accompaniment alone. And yeah, there's some padding, there's some percussion and some strings here and there, but it's pretty minimal. I think I tend to write very when I write music, it's streamlined towards telling the story. I always start with the lyrics, and then the melody follows the mood of the lyrics and fills in sort of the gaps between what the words are trying to convey in order to help flesh out that world that I'm trying to create. And then the piano and the strings and whatever else always follows that.
Mm-hmm.
And so it's so far, I mean, I'm only one album in, but so far the process is very kind of minimalist and streamlined, and I don't tend to go whole hog. That said, I do have a song that has yet to see the light of day that I would love for some like Within Temptation kind of treatment on, but we'll see.
Awesome. That's very cool. So what are like some of your favorite memories of your time actually working in music? Obviously you would have some from when you went to school, or like a show that you went to, or you're the current process that you're in of actually developing your record. What really stands out in your mind?
I think there's two that are really standing out right now. And one was after I finished my senior recital in university. My choir professor came backstage before I went out and talked to everybody. And I had a lot of catching up to do when I got to university. I was late starting voice lessons, and a lot of the stuff that I had done with all the musical theater training kind of had to be unlearned for a lot of the classical stuff to take hold. And so he had kind of watched me go through all of those struggles and things. And he came backstage and said, you finished here on the highest note I could possibly imagine you finishing on. That last aria was the Una voce poco fa from Barbara of Seville. It was a crazy coloratura aria. He's like, it was just sublime. It was, I don't know that I've ever heard a student sing it like that. Like, just really good on you. I've seen all the work you put in, and it's really paid off. And that was so validating to end my senior year with. And then the other one was I went to see Wicked when I was in high school with a bunch of kids from my vocal coach, and her best friend was there. And at the end of the show, I remember talking to Laurel and saying like, oh man, I can't imagine that I'll ever get to that level. And she just looked me dead in the eye and was like, you will, you'll get there. And just, those moments of people having faith in you or ratifying the work that you've put into something that is so dear to you is just, it's what keeps you going.
Definitely. I always like to promote the idea of, surrounding yourself with people that, are either successful themselves or believe in your own success. Surrounding yourself with positivity, essentially.
Yeah.
Awesome. So you mentioned some shows that you've done online. I would imagine that those have been archived and linked somewhere. Where can those be found? And then what other social media do you have where people can like check out what you're doing?
Right. So onlineconcertthing.com is where I am one of the performing artists. So if you're at onlineconcertthing.com and on the main page, it has a list of all the artists that are there, and I'm under Rachel Huitsing, and you can go to archived concerts, and they're all available for a nominal fee as tip rewards for a video download of the whole concert. So you can go there. I'm at Facebook /Rachel Huitsing Music. I'm on Instagram as Rachel Huitsing. Huitsing, by the way, is spelled Huitsing. So Huitsing, pronounced Huitsing. And I will have a website created for the release of the album, but it's still in production. So I can actually send you that link once it's all ready to go, but it's not ready yet.
Awesome. So I always like to give the person that I'm interviewing the opportunity to put out their last word. So like a message that you kind of feel resonates with you.
It's kind of hard to distill in the moment. I guess I would just say that if music is something that you can't help but do, find a way to do it. And it doesn't matter if it starts really small or, starts in a way that you can't necessarily see it becoming public or becoming professional in a way. Just start. Just do whatever is accessible to you. And the people who, again, will believe in you, will see and verify and ratify what you're doing has value. They'll come along and they'll give you those stepping stones to help you along your way. And you just got to have faith in that process.